Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to listen to Debbie Ziegler. She is a lifetime gardener and a master gardener. She is going to teach us about prepping your flower garden for spring. Today is a beautiful day. I'm glad you could all join us, and I think we're all going to learn a lot. So let me just give Debbie the floor. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to be with you on this beautiful March morning that it's bright and sunny, and I have the snow melting in my yard, and I finally am seeing my snowdrops come up in the forest line. So I'm delighted to be able to share with you some great tips for prepping your garden for spring. A little bit about myself. Like Eileen said, I am a lifelong gardener. My first garden, my solo garden, was when I was 9. It consisted of pumpkins, zucchini, and tomatoes. And I have been a gardener ever since. I retired I retired 3 years ago, and on my retirement bucket list was to become a master gardener. I had heard about it and was very interested in it. So I interviewed and was accepted into the program in 2019. I completed my master gardener training and my final project in September of 2020. So if any of you are interested in the Master Gardener program, I encourage you to go on the Penn State Master Gardener Extension website and get some information. They are going to be interviewing applicants for the fall class that will start in October 2021. So without further ado, I'm going to advance my screen, I hope. Oh, always a glitch. There we go. For some reason, my internet's a little slow today. So here's a picture in my own backyard. And to me, it's one of the first signs of spring. It really, truly makes me feel hopeful, renewed, refreshed, and energized. After a very difficult year, being able to get out in the garden is just absolutely wonderful. And what I love is just getting out and digging in the dirt. Gardening to me is a way I can make big improvements in my own environment quickly without a huge output of time and money. And it provides beauty for me and others to enjoy. And I know for any gardener, there's no better compliment than to hear a neighbor say, "I love looking at your flowers." So here's our agenda for the next hour. Tips to get ready for spring, garden locations, new or renovate, plant selections, garden maps, and then followed up with questions. This workshop covers so many subjects, they could be a workshop on their own. There's an attachment to your email that provides many links to get more information, more in-depth information, and we'll have time at the end of the workshop to answer some questions. If I cannot answer one, I'll be able to get back to you, or you can contact the Delaware County Master Gardener Hotline. That information is on the attachment. At this point, the phone hotlines for the Master Gardener program are not active because they're not in the office. So you'll just contact them by email. So 7 easy steps to get ready for spring. Cut carefully, do a careful leaf cleanup, hold off on mulching, prune with care, start weeding and composting, decide whether to start from seed, and test soil and fertilize as needed. So here's all of us gardeners where we're ready to run out into the garden on the slightly warm day, like tomorrow's supposed to be. And when there's no snow on the ground, we want to get out there and cut everything last year down, rake up all the leaves and get that garden ready to plant. But in Pennsylvania, we can get snow and frigid weather through March and sometimes April. So let's hope that doesn't happen this year. So let's break these subjects down. Cutting carefully. Resist cutting spent perennials, leaves and ornamental grasses. Wait until the daytime temperatures are above 50 degrees for 7 consecutive days. The reason why is because there are beneficial insects and pollinators that hibernate in those hollow plant stems. If you absolutely must cut, and I know some of us out there do, place cuttings in a compost pile or carefully bundle and place them against a tree or fence because the insects and pollinators will emerge when ready. And there's one of the adorable little insects that is down in those hollow plant stems. So do a careful leaf cleanup. Again, hold off until daytime temperatures are consistently over 50 degrees. Many adult insects hunker down in the leaf litter. Adult butterflies such as mourning cloaks, question marks, and commas nestle into leaf litter for the winter. As you clean up, try not to disturb these insects. And there's the beautiful mourning cloak. We want to see her in our garden, don't we? So just a little information about leaves. One leaf shade tree can be worth as much as $50 of plant food or humus. Hard to imagine, isn't it? Leaves contain twice as many minerals as manure, and they're great to compost. So composting leaves is simple. This is kind of like a recipe for you. 6 inches of leaves, 2 inches of greens that contain nitrogen like weeds, vegetable waste, and manure, or bone meal, blood meal, or cottonseed meal. Spread 2 inches of native soil between layers to add bacteria to help decomposition. Turn your pile carefully a couple times a year, 3 or 4 times over the winter. Now we're into spring at this point, but still, you will have some fine compost for spring. Reminder, if you're going to be turning, turn carefully because we don't want to disturb those hibernators. I live in a solid wooded lot, and the first year my husband were here and I were here 30 years ago, I came home after work and he's got a leaf pile that is truly like 30 feet wide, about 20 feet long, and about 6 feet deep. And my kids were jumping in it and I couldn't even see them. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to get rid of these things? Well, the one thing that always pains me when I'm out for my morning walk is to see those beautiful leaves that you've now learned can be so valuable to your garden out on a corner in bags, waiting for them to be put in the trash dump. So what do you do with them? And you probably don't have as many leaves as I do, but it's taken me quite a few years to figure out what's the best thing to do and not put them on the corner. I utilize them in my gardens, and I really have gotten it down to somewhat of a science and still am experimenting. And I know we're talking about fall cleanup truly, but not everyone cleans them up completely. They wait until spring. So, this is really a great way to develop some great soil and really help preserve the environment too. So, at this stage of the game, you can't really start from scratch because you don't have the time. It's different getting all your beds put to bed in November versus, starting now in February or March. But you can still, turn them, you can still add some things to them. I've actually used some bone meal this year to help break them down. I'm actually doing it in one of my large beds versus the other to see if I've really seen a difference. And what I do is I just have the rest of my leaves blown back into the woods. And if I need potting soil for my planters later on in the spring or summer, early summer, I just go and I dig it out of the woods. And it is this beautiful, rich, dark soil. So just some tips in what you can do with some of those leaves that you might even have, left over from last year. And composting can be, such a great thing to do. And there's so many other things that you can do with getting a compost bin and layering it, but this is just a very simple way to compost leaves alone. So hold off on mulching. Wait until the soil warms up and dries out before replenishing mulch. Again, many beneficial insects and pollinators hibernate in the soil. So covering the ground with a layer of mulch too early in the spring may block their emergence. And here's just another thing that we might not think about that's down in our soil. So native bees are one of the hibernators that we want in our garden. We need them for pollinating later in the season. And that mulch, I know when I have my yard mulched, I think, oh my gosh, this looks so beautiful. There's nothing wrong with waiting a couple weeks. You know, it's going to look just as beautiful in May than it would, you know, in April, but we really want to save those pollinators. And if you haven't noticed at this point, I do have a little bit of an environmentalist twist to my presentation. My final project for the Master Gardeners was really how you can impact the environment in your own backyard too. So just those tips, because I really had not thought about the birds and the bees and the butterflies as much as I do now understand how important they are for the ecosystem. And if we destroy some of these crucial pollinators and species in our gardens, you know, it will make a difference in the entire food chain. So you really can make an impact in your own backyard. Okay, prune with care. Prune dead and diseased limbs and broken branches from your trees and shrubs now. I have an arborvitae that I need to go trim because it just didn't do well after getting some of the heavy snow on it. I love this suggestion that I picked up in off of Penn State's Extension's website. Photograph tree branch structure. The leafless branch structure enables you to evaluate overlapping branches and overall tree shape and size. Consult an arborist if needed. So quick rule of thumb, don't prune spring flowering shrubs in the winter, like forsythia and lilac. Prune them immediately after they flower. Summer flowering shrubs you can prune in the late winter or early spring. Deciduous shrubs prune late winter, early spring before growth begins. And evergreen shrubs, it's great to start pruning, you know, in March or April, and light pruning can be done in midsummer. There is a great website in your attachment for more specific information by species and recommendations for when best to prune. Now's the time to start weeding. Ugh, not our favorite tasks, but damp soils make it much easier to pull weeds. And after that snow, we've got some really soggy soil. Although not the most fun task, early weeding will really stop the weeds from going to seed, which will prevent more weeds in the future. Several years of good weed management will pay off in the future. So right now, this is a very common winter weed that you see in your garden. It's that hairy bittercress and chickweed. So just think, if you're weeding it now, because we don't want it to go to seed, you won't see it next fall. Start seedlings. Choose seeds, determine how many seeds to order, plan when to start using calendar for sow dates, gather starting kits or containers and growing mix. And in late spring, you're going to harden off your plants to harden off your plants to get them outside. I don't know about you, but I'm receiving emails daily, tempting me and exciting me about new plants and seeds. So choose seed catalogs that are from the Northeast, like Burpee, just one suggestion. Read the seed packets carefully. 1 pack of seeds of each variety should be plenty. If you're looking to grow a vegetable garden, don't forget to grow some flowers in your garden to encourage pollinators. Marigolds and zinnias are very easy to grow from seed and great for beginners. So sow dates. Start your seeds indoors so that they are the correct size to move outdoors after the last frost. Follow the instructions on the seed catalog and use a calendar to figure out the sow dates. So an example is in Pennsylvania, our last frost date, can be like the first or second week of May. So if we say, March 6th, we're going to start our seeds, they'll be ready by May 6th to get outside and plant. Gradually introduce your plants to the garden after there is no longer any threat of frost, and then place them in dappled shade for 5 days. Gradually increase the sun exposure for the next 5 days to reduce the shock. And it's recommended to plant on a cloudy day because they will not be stressed as much. So what to plant? Check seed packets or plant tags for hardiness, sun exposure, space requirements, and bloom and harvest time. Plants that are placed in a location that meets the requirements will thrive without requiring a lot of attention. Plants that are in a location that does not suit them will be stressed and vulnerable to attack from pests and diseases. They require a whole lot more care and an increased chance of not thriving. Read through the seed packet for more information. You'll get specifics on when to start seeds. And just so you know, we are in Zone 7A in Southeast Pennsylvania. And you start them usually about 8 weeks before you would begin to harden them off. And on many websites, you have tremendous information on planting your seeds. So utilize all the information because it's so important to start to get the research so you're planting the right thing at the right place. And so here's some places to look for research. There are so many places to go to research on plants that you're considering. Books and magazines to buy or check out at the library, seed and plant catalogs, even if you don't buy from them. The internet, like I said, I'm getting emails all the time. Another just great option for you. And then there's also these very valuable links. I've mentioned the Penn State Extension website, Cornell website, and the University at U.S. Department of Agriculture website. Test soil and fertilize. Excuse me. So your soil is composed of any combination of clay, sand, and loam, and will have or lack proper nutrients. Test your soil to determine the soil pH, the levels of elements, the nitrogen recommendation, and the results will give you a personalized prescription of exactly what to add to your soil to make it the very best it can be for your garden. So test kits are available through the Pennsylvania Extension office. You can email them. I believe they're $9. You can also get them off at Amazon. The results will really educate you on how to amend your soil. I've used both. I did order something from Amazon. It's a little more complicated and I have to do a little more work in interpreting it. I've also sent soil to Penn State. They provide you with, an envelope and instructions on how to test your soil. And they will, once you've sent it out, you truly will get it in a couple days later, and it will specifically tell you what you need. You need to take samples from various parts of your yard. So I'll just give you, information about what I did. I struggle with grass on a solid wooded lot. And I had used a commercial fertilizer company for quite a few years and wasn't seeing the results. So I stopped using it. I felt like I was getting my weeds killed, but it wasn't helping anything with the grass. So after learning about a soil kit, I did do my soil, gathered my soil. And I think you take it from 3 or 4 places in your yard and put it all in the one bag, and then send it off to Penn State. What I was lacking was lime. So I could contact, again, commercial fertilizing company. And when I said to them I needed, a lime application on my lawn, and I said, and they're great. I said, would you like my soil test? And they said that, well, that's absolutely wonderful. So I was really able to provide to them the specific needs of my yard to see better results with the grass. And then you also have to think about your different gardens. You can have different soil in different areas. your the gardens that I have that I really decomposed leaves in are going to be very different than something I'm starting fresh with. So you really need to think about, if doing tests in different areas too. So new gardens, what are you going to do with your new garden? So let me backtrack a second. I lost my page. So now that you've successfully prepared your garden for planting, do you plan on creating a new garden this spring? So you have to think about what's its purpose. To grow flowers, herbs, or vegetables, add beauty to your space, provide sanctuary for wildlife, prevent erosion, learn or teach about nature, interact with our others. Just some things to consider if you're going to start a new garden. And existing gardens. What are you going to do with the gardens that you already have? Reflect on last year. What worked well? What were you disappointed in? Were there issues with wildlife? Did you like the color selection? Did you have color throughout the season? Personally, I use a garden diary. Not very simple. You can see my pen in it. In the diary, I write everything that I purchase, the price, where I bought it, when I planted it, I do a recap at the end of the year. I include what worked well and why, what I may be going to transplant next year. I also make notes about now on what I want to add to each garden. This is how I get inspired for spring and summer, through looking through those catalogs in my favorite garden books. And I really, do have goals that I set for myself every year too. I started really trying to get something in a very blank area in the wood line, and I have put ferns back there because they survive very, very well in the deep shade. So that was really what I did for some research, and I really researched, what's going to work in deep shade on a forest line. So really think about that, because then you go back to your resources and you can really look it up, whichever way you need to for your garden. Okay, so garden location. Regardless of sun exposure, you should look for deep, well-drained, fertile soil near a water supply, a level area, or use contoured rows or terraces on slopes or a hillside to avoid erosion. Avoid planting near large trees or shrubs to reduce competition for sunlight, water, and nutrients. Fence the site if wild animals live close by. Choose a site that does not carry previous weed problems, and remember to check your hardiness zone. So those are just a couple things to think about for your new garden. So this is the end of part 1 of our workshop. Stay tuned for part 2.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. See you all in part 2.